So what makes you, you? I mean, it's one of the biggest questions there is, right? Today, we're going to unpack that huge, fascinating idea of personality and explore a few of the different ways psychology has tried to explain who we are. All right, let's get into it.
Seriously, just take a second to think about that. When you say the word I, what are you actually talking about? It's everything, isn't it? It's your quirks, your talents, what you're proud of, what keeps you up at night. It's the very core of what makes you different from every other person on the planet. And what's really cool is where the word personality even comes from. It's from the Latin word persona, which was literally the mask an actor would wear in a play. And that gives us this amazing starting point, this metaphor. Is our personality just the face we show the world, the role we decide to play? Well, of course, it's a lot deeper than that. For psychologists, personality is the whole shebang. It's that unique mix of all your characteristics that pretty much defines you as a total person. So it's not just the mask, it's everything behind the mask, too.
But that idea of the mask, our public face, is still super important. This psychologist Carl Jung actually took this idea and turned it into what he called the persona archetype. It's the version of ourselves we put out there for the world to see. I mean, think about it. The you that's at work is probably a little different from the you that's hanging out with your best friends, right? Each one is a kind of persona, a role we play for a different audience.
Okay, so we've got a definition, but that just opens up an even bigger question. Where does all this stuff come from? And this is where it gets really interesting, because different thinkers came up with totally different ways of looking at it, almost like they were all using different camera lenses to look at the very same thing. First, let's look through a lens that takes us way, way down into the hidden parts of our own minds. We're going to start with maybe the most famous name in all of psychology, Sigmund Freud and his psychoanalytic approach. For Freud, the real story was always happening just below the surface, deep in our unconscious.
So Freud imagined our personality as this constant battle between three parts of ourselves. First, you've got the id. This is your pure primal instinct. It runs on the pleasure principle. It wants what it wants, and it wants it now. Think of it like a little kid inside you that's screaming for a cookie. Then, on the other side, you have the superego. That's your moral compass, the little voice that absorbed all the rules from your parents and society saying, nope, cookies are bad and you shouldn't have one. And who's stuck right in the middle? That's the ego, the manager, trying to make a deal, saying, okay, how about you can have one cookie after you finish your homework?
And that's the ego's whole job, really. It operates on the reality principle. It's the part of you that knows you can't just snatch a donut from a stranger or yell in the middle of a quiet library. According to Freud, a healthy personality is all about having a strong ego that can handle the constant push and pull between the id's desires and the superego's rules, all while navigating the real world.
Okay, time to switch lenses. We're moving away from Freud's deep, dark, hidden conflicts and into something we can actually see and describe. The specific characteristics that make you, well, you. This is the trait approach, and a guy named Gordon Allport was one of its pioneers.
Allport had this idea that we could really understand a person by figuring out their key traits, and he even organized them into a kind of hierarchy. At the very top, some people might have what he called a cardinal trait. This one all-consuming passion that basically defines their entire life. Think of Mother Teresa's altruism. But what's more common for most of us are central traits. These are the handful of words, maybe 5 to 10, that you'd use to describe a friend. Oh, she's really funny, kind of shy, but super smart. And then at the bottom, we all have tons of secondary traits. Things like loving spicy food or hating scary movies. They only really show up in specific situations.
So what even is a trait, really? Allport defined them as consistent and enduring ways of reacting to our world. And the two big words there are consistent and enduring. See, feeling nervous before one big speech doesn't automatically mean you have an anxious trait. But if you're a person who feels nervous in most new social situations, now that's a trait. It's a stable, predictable part of who you are.
All right, on to our third and final lens, and this one is a complete 180 from the others. What if personality isn't something deep inside you at all? What if it's not some collection of traits you were born with, but something you actually learn? This is the wild idea behind B.F. Skinner and the behavioral approach. For Skinner, it all came down to reinforcement. And the process is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. You, or any living thing really, do something, anything. That action is then followed by a consequence. If that consequence is good, like a reward, you're probably going to do it again. If the consequence is bad, or if nothing happens at all, you're less likely to repeat it. Simple as that. So from this point of view, your personality is really just the sum of all your learned behaviors. It's the collection of things you do that have been rewarded and reinforced throughout your entire life. Ever since you were a little kid, your parents, your teachers, your friends, they've all been rewarding some behaviors and discouraging others, and that process has shaped you into the person you are today. It's a pretty challenging idea, because it suggests that who we are is less about some fixed self inside and more about our history of experiences.
Whoa, okay, so we've just looked at 3 completely different ways to explain that tiny little word, I. We've seen it as a hidden battle, as a collection of stable traits, and as a pattern of learned habits. So let's just put them all side by side and see the whole picture.
So, let's just do a quick recap. The psychoanalytic view from Freud, it says our personality is shaped by all these hidden, unconscious battles. The trait view from Allport, it says our personality is just a collection of our core, stable characteristics. And then the behavioral view from Skinner, it says our personality is simply everything we've learned to do based on a lifetime of rewards. 3 major theories, 3 totally different ways of explaining what makes you, you. And that, of course, brings the question right back to where we started. You. As you think about your own life, which one of these ideas feels right? Are you driven by hidden desires you don't fully understand, like Freud said? Can you basically be summed up by 5 or 6 key traits, like Allport believed? Or are you pretty much a product of your life experiences, like Skinner argued? You know, maybe the real answer isn't about picking just one. Maybe it's about seeing how all 3 of them are just different pieces of that amazing, complicated puzzle of what it means to be you.